Everybody, good evening. It is so wonderful to be back here at Mussar Mondays. I know everyone has the NCAA championship tonight, so we'll make sure to finish promptly so everyone can not miss even one dribble. Not even one dribble. All right, we're taking that into serious consideration here. Okay, today we begin the second chapter of Mesilat Yesharim, of the path of the just, or ways of the upright, way of the upright. Ramchal goes on a very, very important journey now to clearly guide us in that path of growth. Till now we've discussed a channel through which we need to think, the way we need to see life, the way we need to understand the purpose of living. Now that we have that purpose of living, how do we put this into fruition? How do we put it into action? The first step, says the Ramchal, is vigilance. All right? What is vigilance? We have to define what that is. The essence of vigilance, of zihirut, is that a person exercise great care in all his actions and affairs. Okay? Hine inyan hazihirutu sheyeh adam nizhar b'ma'asav u'b'inyanav. All of his actions and affairs. Pay attention. Take great care. Klomar, what does that mean? Meaning to say, mitbonen u'mifakech al ma'asav v'dorachav. That is to contemplate and monitor his actions and his ways in life. Hatovim hemim lo. To determine whether they are good or not. Levilti azov nashov l'sakanat ha'avadon chas v'chalila. So that he not abandon his soul to the danger of extinction, God forbid. And not simply proceed through life following his routine like a blind man walking in the dark. So what the Ramchal is telling us here like this. Imagine someone is living their life. 70 years, they have certain habits that they picked up from their parents, and they are accustomed to certain foods they eat, certain foods they don't eat. Certain clothes they wear, certain clothes they don't wear. Certain customs that they follow, certain customs they don't follow. Most people in the world today will not take the time to evaluate whether or not what they are doing is right or wrong, because they don't ask any questions. That's what my parents did, so that's what I do. Maybe your perspective is wrong. Maybe it's right, but maybe know the reason for it. But to take the time to evaluate whether or not it's right or wrong is what Ramchal is telling us. It means that we need to take the time to evaluate whether or not the path that we are on is the right path or the wrong path. That's what the Ramchal is telling us. He uses here terminology that we've discussed in the past. For example, ma'asav v'drachav, which is two ways of saying his actions. His actions and his actions. Well, remember when we discussed this, we discussed that whenever you see this duplicitous language, usually what it's coming to tell us is there are two functions. There's the function of the mind, there's the function of the heart. You go to a doctor. The doctor tells you, listen, your cholesterol's through the roof. You better start taking medication, and you better slow down on your consumption of meat. So you say, okay. He says, but listen, this is your life, okay? You're gonna be dead if you don't slow it down. So you say, okay, no, I'm gonna take 2 months off of meat. I'm gonna take my medication. I'm gonna behave. I'm gonna eat the right things. Okay? You go to your friend's house that night. They invite you for a barbecue. Right? Now you say to yourself, I know this is bad. I know my doctor doesn't want me to eat this. And I'm going to be very careful the entire time not to eat it. How many people walk out having not eaten what they shouldn't have eaten? Probably zero. Why? Because although you know something, doesn't mean that that's the way you act. How many people know that you don't drive without a seatbelt? And yet we see every single day there are people who die in car accidents having not worn seatbelts. A seatbelt could have saved their life. They know it, but it doesn't mean that you put it into action. Just because you know something doesn't mean you live it. Doesn't mean you do it. Everybody knows there's foods that are healthier than others. So, doesn't mean people do it. So, when you see Ma'asav v'drachav, it's in their mind, they know what they should be doing. But that's not the derech, it's not the actual way that they choose. Okay? Then you have, and he says, mitbonen u'mifakach. It's also, again, to introspect, to think about it, and then to oversee, which again makes sense. Think about it. Is this right or wrong? But then you have to oversee, am I actually doing the right or wrong thing? You know, companies have this. Big companies. They set out a new course of how they're going to sell their product. That's not enough. Now they have to oversee the employees to see whether or not they're following through with the new policy. What do you mean? We made a decision. Just because you made a decision doesn't mean anything. People have habits. People have ways in which they act. And just because you tell them that this is the right thing for them to do doesn't mean they change. So us in our own actions, the same exact thing. Just because we know what's right and what's wrong doesn't mean we actually do it. So we could know the exact right path. I know that I should be doing this. Well, so, there's another very important piece here. If you notice, the last phrase that I translated said the following: and not simply proceed through life following his routine like a blind man walking in the dark. What's a blind man walking in the dark? Can I ask you a question? Anybody here? What's a blind man walking in the dark?
Makes no difference.
It doesn't make a difference if it's light or dark. What does it help? If he's blind, he's blind. So why does he say, why does the Ramchal say like a blind man in the dark? Blind man in the day is just as blind.
Well, actually, a blind man can find his way around better in the dark than a non-blind man.
So why does he say in the dark? It should be irrelevant. Like a blind man. No, a blind man in the dark. And we know the Ramchal, according to the Gaon of Vilna, this entire book is divine wisdom. This is not some man who wrote it. It's divine wisdom. Zurach HaKodesh. Divine inspiration that wrote this book. So why would he write this? Because what's the difference between light and dark? When it's light outside, someone who could see can guide you. When it's dark outside, even someone who could see normally can't guide you. And what the Ramchal is telling us here is that only you can do this introspection. Nobody else can do it for you. You can't give the job off to a friend and say, hey, I want you to evaluate whether or not what I do is right or wrong. I want you to decide for me whether or not I'm eating healthy or not. I want you to decide whether or not my thoughts are good or bad. I want you to decide whether or not I'm maximizing my potential. No one else can guide you, because only you can guide yourself.
Very heavy.
If you don't guide yourself, what are you potentially falling into the trap of being a blind man in the dark? Nobody else can help you. So it's a big responsibility that we have here of vigilance, of paying attention, evaluating, putting everything on the chopping block and saying, asking ourselves, what I am doing here, is this right or is this wrong? Is this good? Is this bad? And you know what? Just because you may find something in the way you live, right? Each one of us, we may evaluate and suddenly realize, you know something? I've been doing this wrong my whole life. I don't know why my parents may have done this. I don't know why my grandparents may have done this. I don't know why my rabbi in school may have told me to do it like this. Turns out he was wrong. Does that mean you're going to change on a dime? No. But at least you know the difference between right and wrong. And that's the most important thing right now. Right now, we're not talking about change. Right now, we're talking about identifying right and wrong, good and bad. The right path, the wrong path. That's what we're looking for right now. So if a person is getting into the frame of mind of vigilance, vigilance means you pay attention. You pay attention to the things you do, to the things you say. Maybe, I actually spoke to a person who's a CEO of a company, and the topic we were learning together was about honor. Talking about honor. The idea of honor, of kavod, is a very, very important topic in Judaism. Not honor necessarily for other people, for yourself. Self-respect. Having self-dignity. Something the world knows nothing about. So he was saying to me, tell me, do you think I carry myself appropriately for my position? I said, I think you do, except when you open your mouth. Because the minute he opened his mouth, so much foul language came out that it just was unbecoming of who he should be representing. You should be representing someone of stature, someone of respect, someone of... He opens up and it's like, it's hard to listen to. And he sat there and said, I never even realized that. Now, that's the problem. This is why this is the first thing. Because how can a person work on arrogance? How can a person work on humility? How can a person work on anger? How can a person work on any trait if they don't have any form of introspection, of any type of calculation of what's good or what's bad? What are they doing right? What are they doing wrong? If we don't have this first step of understanding who we actually are, then we have no way of perfecting any trait. So this is really the beginning of all work, starting to take an accounting of who we are. Do I ever get angry? I don't know. Most people, you'll ask them, tell me, do you get angry? Me? How can you say it? No. How can you, right? But this whole idea of thinking about where I am in my own personal growth, most people don't think about that. Most people don't even have a clue as to where they're holding their own spiritual lives. We live life and that's it.
Are you talking only about like foul language or how people
everything.
Everything.
Do I lose my temper when someone cuts the line in the store? Am I impatient? Do I get frustrated at the car in front of me? Am I happy? Am I jealous? Am I, just to evaluate ourselves. To evaluate ourselves. Who am I? And to put it all, even, again, the goal here right now, step one, is not to fix the problem. So we're always trying to jump to go to step two. Okay, so now, no, that's not the goal. The goal is to evaluate. I'll give you an example. Okay, it's something which is very common here at Torch, because the Torch is a place of growth, hopefully of spiritual growth, and many people come into a certain challenge. They start learning and they start saying, okay, so I'm a hypocrite because here I am trying to grow in one area of my Judaism, but I'm not good in the other area of my Judaism. And relax. First thing we have to know about Judaism is not all or nothing. Judaism is not all or nothing. People think, how can I start keeping some kosher if I don't keep Shabbos? How can I start working on modesty if I don't eat you can't do everything in one shot. Right? One step at a time. And that's the most important. Right now, it's like when you go to a psychologist, right, for a mental health evaluation. So many times, They say, okay, so how am I going to fix this problem? Whoa, 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 whoa. We're not trying to fix the problem here. We're trying to identify the problem first. Right? First, identify the problem. Now that you've identified the problem, now we can work. Step 2 is trying to pinpoint how we can fix this. We all are becoming our own psychologists through the process of learning this teaching of Ramchal.
I have a question.
Yes.
Like that gentleman, the CEO you were talking about, he didn't realize he was doing that. Does it help at any point for us then to go, after we've looked at ourselves, to go to someone that we trust and ask them?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. I will tell you that 9 out of 10 people will be hesitant to help you because they're afraid if I tell you that you really do have a bad temper, you'll never want to talk to me again. Right?
Yeah.
So I don't know how honest I need to be with you. I'll tell you, no, you're just great at everything.
So how do you
You're-
get around that?
A person has to look into themselves. Your person, it's not. No one said perfecting our character is easy. Ever. No one ever said that. It's tough. It's a lot of work. But it's the most rewarding work because we have the tools in our own hands to become a perfect person. Ben, what's on your mind? All right, good. Here you go. See, he actually over here, he quotes my grandfather. Throughout the chapters on Zehirut, on vigilance, Ramchal refers to drachim, ways or paths. The term derech, which means way, is often used to refer to a person's overall approach to life in general. A person's path transcends individual deeds. It is his philosophy of life, which influences all of his thoughts and actions. If one truly wants to serve Hashem with all his heart, it is not enough to focus on specific actions, decisions, and conversations that transpire daily. Rather, one must also carefully examine his path, that is, his general approach to life. Some commentators define drachim, ways, as referring to the character traits that shape one's actions. For example, an impulsive person may make rash decisions or blurt out hurtful words. While impulsiveness might not be forbidden in and of itself, it can lead to improper and hurtful deeds and words. Rabbi Shlomo Wolbe. How do you like that? Right? In chapter 3, Ramchal will elaborate on what is involved in contemplating and monitoring one's actions and ways. So a person has to really take a step back for a second and just look, what is the direction I'm taking in my life? I say that that's what teenagehood is why teenagehood is so challenging. Because teenagehood really is determining what is the future of this human being. I could be a scientist. I could be a photographer. I could be a scholar. I could be an attorney. Right? I could be a rabbi, oive, right? If all fails, right? A person can really, put themselves on a certain trajectory. And many times you put yourself on a trajectory. I met an individual, I'm not going to say what profession he's in, but he's in the medical field. And every time I got together with him, he was complaining about what he does and complaining. He's making a ton of money, but he's complaining. So I said to him, what's the deal? You're always complaining about what you do. He says, I hate every day I do my job. He says, I know I'm saving people's lives, but I hate what I do. I said, so why are you doing this? He said, my parents forced me. He said, I prefer being a garbage man than doing what I'm doing. He says, I hate what I do.
That's sad.
It is sad. Imagine he's going to potentially continue in his practice for the next 30, 40 years and hate every day he's doing it.
You should switch this.
But he's willing to suffer through it
What's
for
that?
the good things that he has as a result of it.
I don't. It's hard to know. I would venture to say that in most cases, it's just too difficult for people to turn. You know, it's how do they say? Big ships turn slowly.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
It takes a long time, and people aren't always patient to say, you know what, I'm willing to make a small change and another small change and another small change and another small change and another small. Eventually, I'll turn it around, or just leave it alone and just go with it.
Rabbi, you speak of וידוי. למי אנחנו עושים? לחשבון נפש?
It's our own self. It's our own self. Yes, we're talking about how do I become the best person for myself. I'm not trying to be something for someone else. I'm not trying to impress other people. I'm here because we're here on a task. God put us into this world for a very specific purpose. If God imagine this, right? I've said this story in the past, but I'll repeat it. There was a great sage who, when he finished writing his book, he made a very big party. He invited all of his friends and all of his students, and he made this big party. Everyone was wondering, what's the big deal? You know, what's the big deal that you wrote this book and like you're making such a big party for it? So he got up and he said, I want to tell you all a story. And he said that when he was a young boy, he overheard his parents. He was a troublemaker, and you know, his parents would send him to a rabbi to go teach him. He was a troublemaker, and the rabbi complained to the parents. He said, listen, maybe it's not a good idea for him to sit and learn Torah. Maybe he should go become a shoemaker. Maybe he should do something else. He heard that and he was terrified. That night he had a dream where he was standing in front of the heavenly courts, and they asked him, "Nu, so what did you do with your life?" He says, "What do you mean? I'm a shoemaker. I made beautiful shoes for people. People came to me. They engaged their daughter, and they wanted beautiful shoes for the weddings, and I made beautiful shoes for them." He says, "Yeah, that's great, but where's the book? Book? What are you talking about?" Yeah, where's the book? We sent you to this world to write this book. Where is that book? Me, book? I'm a shoemaker. I don't write books. He says, no, but we sent you with special skills, with special abilities, with special smarts to write that special book that only you can write. Where is that book? And the rabbi says to the people, this is that book. He made a decision at that young age, told his parents, you know what? I'm not becoming a shoemaker. Send me back to the rabbi. I'm going to start taking it seriously. He said, this is that book. It happens to be that on Talmud, there are very few books that are more complicated to understand and more deep than that book. It's like brilliance. Quoting all different areas of the Talmud and all the different contradictions and all the what seemed to be right, and explaining everything and making everything fit perfectly. Unbelievable works. But imagine had he lived his whole life, 80, 90, 100 years, being that shoemaker, and then he comes back to heaven and they say, where's that book? Is it me book? What book? I don't have no book. Right? We all have to think, maybe, Rabbi Akiva was 40 years old and he turned it all around. He was a shepherd. He didn't know how to read the alphabet. But he realized he had a different calling. Yes?
I want to go back to something that you said.
The meat. You want to go back to the meat?
The meat?
The meat, yeah.
What if you spend your whole life evaluating your problem? That some people don't change.
What's
and
that?
They know what the problem is. Either by addiction.
Right. So we all need help. We all need help. There's nothing to talk about. We all need help. There's no one who's got it easy. I promise you. You look at any person on the globe. You say this guy. Everybody's got baggage. Everybody. Yes.
But isn't it the corollary to Pharaoh? You know, they say, if you're on the wrong track and you really desire it, God will help you down that line. But if you want to go to the right track and really desire it, God will help you go to the right track. Mm-hmm. So anyone who contemplates that long on changing something and improving themselves, God will step in and
Assist you.
assist them.
Right. If someone desires something long enough to correct themselves, they will get it. They will get it. There's
The
nothing to
question
talk
is
about.
the true desire or not. Whether it's a mental contemplation versus an actual commitment of soul and energy.
Yeah, but I kind of disagree with you a little bit, because some people have to have like minds in order to stop what they're doing. In other words, some people, let's say they're a drug or alcohol addiction, they gotta go through the steps, and they gotta be with people that are like them. in order
So,
for
but
them
again,
to try.
everybody.
You can't change
But let me
that.
explain something. So one second. Everybody's got an addiction, okay? And everybody, we are creatures of habit. Some people, that habit is to alcohol. Some people, that habit is to drugs. Some people, that habit is to anger. Some people, that habit is to other negative traits. That's also an addiction that's no less. Okay, the guy's not wasted away on the sidewalk, right? But he might be wasted away in his marriage. He might be hurting the people around him. So yeah, we identify, oh, drugs and alcohol, that's an addiction. Since when is, maybe, people who don't speak truthfully, why is that not an addiction? It's an addiction that needs help just like any other addiction. We don't associate because, so he's just dishonest. He's not, it's like he's not drunk on the street, so it's not a problem. No, it's just as much a problem. All types of addictions, the idea is that when we don't have control of something, meaning we've let ourselves go, there's certain things, that's true. There are certain things that are addiction that people just don't have the control anymore because they've lost contact with themselves. And if you look at the 12 steps, by the way, which I've been actually studying the 12 steps with one of my friends, right? We've been studying it and try to connect it to Torah ideas. If you look at those 12 steps, what is the number one thing they're talking about? Connect to a higher power. You have to connect to God. What are we talking about?
Same thing.
Right? This is the 12th step without 12 steps for your soul. Right? We all get into certain routines and certain habits that are unhealthy for ourselves, for our spiritual selves, for our physical selves. Right? So, yes, I'll tell you something very interesting. How dangerous would it be if you had right outside this magnificent torch center, you had someone comes with a what do they call those things? Jackhammer. Someone comes with a jackhammer and starts jacking up the cement here. All right? And then leaves this big 3-foot hole, 3 feet deep, right in front of the door. What would you say? Good thing, bad thing?
Bad thing.
Why is that a bad thing?
Someone might get hurt.
Someone's going to get hurt. Right? Someone might get hurt, and therefore, it's reckless. Do you know what our sages say? Our sages say that someone who walks around with a frown is like a pit in a public domain. Right? We understand. Oh, what do you mean? You dug a pit in the middle of the mall? Someone's going to fall right in there, right? In the middle of a walkway, right? Someone's going to fall in. You walk around like this, all miserable, right? You know what's going to happen? You are a pit in public domain. You're making people upset. You're making people sad. You're making people, cry. You're making people, whatever it is. Your face is also public domain. You get angry in public or in private, it's affecting people. It's affecting the people who live in your house, the people who live around your house, the people in your block. Just because you're upset, everyone's got to suffer? No better than the drunken. Send them to the 12-step program, right? So you understand, we're dealing with out-of-control circumstances. The out-of-control circumstances is primarily when we don't identify the problems we have.
We're supposed to be happy or smile about something like that, or no? Just forget it and just keep on smiling?
Well,
This incident.
which one? Which one?
Where someone just said, the deep hole we're talking about that make it rather dangerous for anybody, So are we supposed to just ignore it and just keep being happy, not having a long face or feeling badly about it?
No. That means we have to work on it. Someone is upset, they have to work on it. They can't walk around with a down face.
Now we
Right?
feel-
You have an empty pit, you fill it up, right? You don't say, okay, just leave it and we'll ignore it. No,
At
someone's
least
going to
you
get
put
hurt.
a fence around it.
Exactly.
Am I out of control on when I call the name of the Democrats in every...
Oh, that's not
We don't talk politics here. This is a politics-free. It's a politics-free.
Because
It-
of the immoral society they want
This-
us to accept.
One second. This is a politics-free society. We don't talk politics here. Whether or not I agree with you or I don't agree with you.
Ofra, you can catch more
No,
people
no.
with honey. Don't say
No.
rats or
Let's
demon
let please. No, please. We're not going to talk.
Politics.
No.
It doesn't matter who she's talking
I can't
about.
help it, I don't stop.
No.
Rabbi,
I don't prolong it. Just
It's not a matter of politics. I'm not talking politics here. What I'm saying is this. They teach us who is the best victor. He who turns an enemy into a friend. And if you have someone who doesn't agree with your politics, you will never change them by demonizing them.
So I
You
have
can
like
only
this.
change
So-
them with
so
love.
I have a different exercise in one of my classes. We talk about patience. In one of my classes that we talk about, you remember this?
Yeah.
We talk about patience. I tell you, I will give you $10 gift card to Starbucks, and I'm asking you to please take out a friend who you completely disagree with politically, and treat them out to coffee, and say, I want you to be my guest, and spend the entire hour that you're together talking about politics, and listening to their perspective, and not arguing. It's okay. People can have a different perspective than you. It's very healthy. Because guess what? Anybody who's been married for more than 12 minutes knows that.
And we
Okay?
have a problem, the Democrats don't have that.
Stop.
No politics here. No politics. This is politics-free zone. So, the next paragraph we see V'hinei ze davar she'asechel yechayevehu vadai. The obligation of vigilance is a logical one. This requirement to examine one's actions and life's path is something that the intellect surely demands. Okay, everybody understands that you need. Imagine you're going hiking. Anybody here ever go hiking? I love hiking.
Sure.
Right? One of the things you need to do is you need to get a map. You need to get a map so you make sure you're going the right way. Right? So you have certain markers, but sometimes the markers aren't clear. Sometimes the markers aren't where they're supposed to be. Sometimes you've gone off the trail and you can't find the marker. Right? So you look around, you see certain things, they'll tell you you're off the path. Someone who just goes without any it's like trying to travel in a new city without a map or without Google Maps or Waze or one of those right?
GPS.
A GPS, right? You need to look at a GPS. You need to get to know where you're going. To live life without evaluating yourself is doing the same. You're like, someone who doesn't have their bearings. The intellect demands that one evaluate where they're going.
GPS for the soul.
GPS for the soul, exactly. Ki acharei sheyesh la'adam de'ava haskel. Since a person has the discernment and the intellect needed, lahatzil et atzmo v'livrach ma'avdo nishmato, to save himself and to flee from the potential extinction of his soul, which he faces if he fails to analyze his actions and paths. How can it be that he should want to avert his eyes from the path of his salvation? So let's understand. We all know that if you'd be in a situation of danger, right? Imagine this, okay? You're walking down the street, and these thugs come and they say, they pull out a gun, God forbid, and they say, money or your life. You turn around and run for your life, right? Anybody that wouldn't run for their life, maybe you'd give them the money, especially if once they leave go of you, you're running for your life, you're so terrified, right? Why? Because this is trouble. This is not a place where good things happen. I got to get out of here. I got to flee. Everybody understands that. If a person, I'll give you an example. A woman told me she goes with her friends every week. They meet at a coffee shop and they spend an hour talking about everybody. They talk about this one, they talk about that one. Did you hear about them? Did you hear about them? Did you see what she wore? Oh, that was awful. Did you see that? Did you see that? They talk Lashon Hara for an hour straight. And she said to me, you know, we learned in some of our classes about, especially this week's Torah portion, about the proper speech, and terrible things happen to a person who speaks negatively about other people. What do I do? Rabbi, what do you recommend I do? And I said, maybe you shouldn't hang out with them. Right? It's maybe a good idea, right? If you go for coffee and this is what happens, maybe don't go with them for coffee. I never even thought about that.
Then they'll talk about her.
Right? What's that?
Then they'll talk about
It didn't even occur to them that they should not go. If you go to a place which has a danger, why would you go? If someone tells you that the bridge, right, lost its gate on the side, would you continue staying on that bridge? You get off as quickly as possible. You go right on it every day, with the risk that you could fall right off. But people don't notice the dangers that we have. By the way, someone who recognizes that getting into that coffee date with that person who doesn't think like them politically, perhaps. Someone who thinks that it will result in anger, don't go. Don't go. If you know that saying something will irritate the person that you're talking to, don't say it.
Why provoke them?
But people don't think, because again, the first thing we need to do is evaluate the direction we want to live our lives. So think of it like this. I want to live a good, harmonious, happy, healthy, friendly, kind, generous life. Does this fit into it? Provoking other people? That doesn't fit into it, so I'm not going to do it. Understand? Once we get the direction in which we want to live our lives, I want to live a more spiritual life. So maybe hanging out at the bars is not anymore my thing to do. Because that's not exactly where you find spirituality, unless you're really drunk.
Or you're the bartender.
Right? That's not where you find your spirituality. So why would you go there? But people never think about it, because this is just what we do. So this is what we do. But once someone has a direction, this is not where I want to be heading in my life. Oh, now we have a different story here.
A lot of people are afraid of change, but change is inevitable. Change is nothing's as permanent as change.
The most amazing thing in life is change. And yet it's the most feared. There's nothing more beautiful than change.
Anything was comfortable in trying something that you know is going to be difficult.
Well, again, it's uncertain. I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. Should I not? Go back and forth. It's okay. Right? We know, right? It's like when I'm standing on the ladder and I have a strong peg, I'm okay. But the minute I take the next step, it's like, is it going to crack? Is it going to be able to hold me? Is it going to, right? That's you want to grow? There's always going to be that risk. There's always going to be that challenge, that fear. Now, we have to talk about this in a different class about not taking big steps and taking very small steps and making sure that the steps are right. Yes.
I was just going to ask you, with regard to what would prevent one from being able to either take the next step or the temptation to go and do something that's not good. One of the things, I know you and I have spoken privately about the fact that when you recognize, as you were pointing out, like if you know that something is going to end up irritating somebody, if you're aware of that, if you pause for a moment and realize that really this is the Yitzhar, recognize it, calling out to yourself, I know what this is. In the sense you can almost sort of separate yourself and sort of talk to yourself. It seems to be an effective way, or certainly with regard to myself, when we spoke talking about, like, you know, it comes to something that's not kosher or something you shouldn't be doing. If you can almost, I'm not talking about split personality.
Identify.
But look at yourself. I mean, to literally talk to yourself and say, I see what this is, and now I'm going to go take. I'm going to avoid going
Falling into this trap.
Exactly.
Exactly. If we don't realize what the traps are, how can we avoid them? Right? If a mouse doesn't understand what the mouse trap is, he'll get caught. But as soon as he understands this is a mouse trap, this is where my granddaddy and my daddy got caught, right? Maybe I should stay away from these things. Now he understands, okay? There is certainly no lowliness and lunacy worse than this. Thou a second, and one who acts in this manner and does not take these logical steps of self-analysis to avoid the terrible danger of spiritual extinction, is more lowly than even the animals and beasts, asher b'tiv'am lishmor al atzmam, whose instinct is to protect themselves. Ve'al kein yivruchu ve'yanusu mikol ma sheyira'eh lehem heyot mazik lehem, and who therefore flee and attempt to escape from anything that they perceive as potentially harmful to them. So, what we have is you have sometimes people who don't protect themselves, don't watch over themselves, don't look after those spiritual pitfalls, and fall right in. What does Ramchal tell us? Those people are worse than animals. Why? Because an animal sees danger, runs away. You ever see those, this animal channel? You see the lion getting ready. It's getting ready to attack. The animals notice. They run for their lives. Here you have a human being. This human being could be seeing the challenge. Stays right there. Doesn't protect themselves. Doesn't protect themselves. How can a human being not protect themselves? How can a human being see the challenge, see their pitfall, their spiritual pitfall, and not take caution?
Frozen.
Not frozen. Most people choose not to see. They choose not to look. I don't want to see. Live and let live. I don't want to see. Prefer leaving blind, just like they have in the Matrix, right? You can take the blue pill, the red pill. One, you'll live in oblivion. You'll live in a world that is completely vain, and you'll be masked from any type of challenge. Or you take the other pill, and you'll see the challenges of life and face the struggles. Right? The choice of our patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, was the choice of picking up on those challenges, facing them face to face, not running away from those challenges, and fixing them. Jacob, the example of Jacob fighting with the angel. He didn't run away from the angel.
He couldn't run away.
Right. But the idea is that someone who cares about their spiritual growth doesn't run away. What you could do is at times avoid certain situations, but when you're in it, you don't run away from it.
Give us an example.
Yeah, you know you're going to get angry when you meet someone, so maybe avoid meeting them. But once you do meet them, control yourself. Okay, so you can't always run away from your problems. In fact, most of the time you can't run away from your problems. However, you absolutely could pay attention to your problems, and if the problem arises, you say, I'm going to try my best to overcome it. And you know what? You might fail the first, and second, and third, and fourth, but eventually you'll win it. Right? I don't want to eat that non-kosher food. The first time I couldn't overcome it. I smelled that smelled it, and I just couldn't resist. Okay, but maybe the next time. Maybe next time you fell. Maybe the next time. The idea is you're in the game. Okay? Right? At least you're in the game. What's the difference between the people at home watching the football game and the people in the field actually playing? You're sitting at home behind a screen. They're actually in the field. They're facing the challenge every day. So they may have missed the catch this time. They'll catch it next time. They're in the game at least. We're sitting at home. What are we doing? Criticizing them. Monday morning footballing. Right?
Armchair quarterbacks.
Armchair, exactly. The idea here is that we need to be in the game of spiritual growth. And that's what Ramchal is teaching us here. Ramchal is telling us that we cannot run away from the responsibility of identifying what our responsibilities in this world are. The first thing we need to do now, in the coming week, is to start pinpointing what do I want to be, and then start identifying where am I in that world. Right? Where am I? And identify those problems. We all have issues. We all have to work on things. What are they? Because if we don't know what they are, we'll never fix them. If we do know what they are, we have a chance of perfecting them. Good luck, folks.
Thank you.
Right, go NCAA. Go Wichita. I don't know who's playing, but whoever's playing, good luck.
Texas Tech, Virginia.
Texas Tech.
Have a good night, everybody.